She typed it the same way she always did. I'm working late, don't wait up. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Across the street under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, Ethan Cole locked his phone screen and looked up at the hotel entrance. He had already been waiting for 23 minutes. The city never questioned lateness. In New York City, staying late wasn't suspicious. It was expected. Offices glowed well past midnight. Restaurants buzzed with post-meeting dinners, and no one blinked when a message came in after dark. So when Vanessa texted, I'm working late, don't wait up. Ethan didn't think twice, at least not the first time. He was sitting at the kitchen island, a half-finished glass of bourbon resting near his laptop. Blueprints stretched across the screen, clean lines, deliberate structures. His world was built on precision, load-bearing walls, calculated stress points. Vanessa's world was different, fluid, adaptive. Public relations thrived on perception, not structure. Maybe that's why he trusted her. Or maybe that's why he didn't know how to read her when things started to shift. You're home late, Vanessa said one evening, slipping off her heels by the door. Ethan glanced at the clock. 9:47 p.m. Not as late as you, he replied, tone light. She smiled, quick, effortless. Client dinner ran over. He nodded. Good meeting. The best kind, she said, walking past him. The kind that pays next quarter's rent. It was a joke. Or at least it sounded like one. Ethan smiled back. But something about the timing felt off, not wrong, just unaligned. The second time the message came earlier. Running late. Team brainstorm turned into drinks. He stared at it longer than necessary, then typed back. No problem. Be safe. 3 dots appeared, paused, then disappeared. No reply. That was new. Vanessa had always been responsive. Even when busy, she'd send a quick emoji, a short acknowledgement. It was part of her maintaining connection, even in fragments. Now there were gaps, small ones, easy to ignore. Unless you were someone like Ethan. A week later, he noticed the pattern. Same phrasing, same timing window, same absence afterward. It wasn't repetition. It was variation within repetition. Like someone trying not to repeat themselves too perfectly. You've been working late a lot, he said casually one night. Vanessa didn't look up from her phone. Big campaign coming up. For the hotel chain? Her fingers paused just for a fraction of a second, then resumed. Yeah. Why no reason? Ethan said. Just sounds intense. It is, she replied finally, meeting his eyes. You wouldn't like it. There it was. A sentence that meant nothing. And everything. That night Ethan couldn't sleep. Not because he believed she was lying, but because for the first time he considered the possibility. And once that possibility existed, it didn't leave. At 2:13 a.m., he sat up in bed, the city's distant hum filling the silence. Vanessa slept beside him, her breathing steady face turned away. He studied her, not with suspicion, with recalibration, as if trying to redraw a blueprint that no longer aligned with reality. The next morning, everything felt normal. Coffee brewed. News played softly in the background. Vanessa kissed him on the cheek before leaving. Long day, she said. Might be late again. Ethan nodded. Text me, he replied. Always do. She smiled. And for a moment, he almost believed her. At 11:42 p.m. that night, Ethan's phone buzzed. Not a message, an email. Subject line, receipt confirmation. He frowned opening it. A hotel logo stared back at him. A minibar charge. 2 glasses of wine. Timestamp 11:42 p.m. Room number included. And at the top, Vanessa's name. Ethan didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't react. For exactly 6 seconds. Not shock. Not denial. Just stillness, because in that moment, something inside him didn't break. It aligned. He locked the phone, set it down, picked up his bourbon, and took a slow sip. Across the apartment, the city lights flickered. Unbothered, unaware. Ethan leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on nothing. not asking questions. Not yet. Because questions were for people who didn't already know where the answers would lead. And for the first time, Ethan didn't want reassurance. He wanted proof. He reached for his phone again, opened a different app, and began to look. I'm working late. The words echoed in his mind, not as a statement, but as a structure, a pattern, a lie. And Ethan Cole was very good at understanding structures. The second lie didn't feel like a lie. That was the problem. It arrived dressed as routine softened by familiarity. Running late again. Client dinner stretched longer than expected. Ethan read it while standing in front of a floor-to-ceiling window, the skyline of New York City, reflecting faintly across the glass, like a second quieter city, layered on top of the real one. He didn't reply immediately. Not this time. Instead, he watched the message as if it might change. As if the words would rearrange themselves into something more honest if given enough silence. They didn't. By the third week, the phrase had evolved. Not repeated. Refined. Still at the office. Wrapping things up. Last-minute revisions. Don't wait up. Team went out after didn't plan it. Each message carried the same core structure: delay, justification, reassurance. But the variations were deliberate. Subtle enough to avoid suspicion. Unless you were looking for them. Ethan started noticing the timing first. The messages always came between 8:47 and 9:15 p.m. Never earlier. Never later. As if there was a window narrow controlled when the lie needed to be delivered. And after that, silence. He tested it. One night at 9:03 p.m., Vanessa texted, "Running late. Don't wait up." Ethan replied immediately. "What are you working on?" 3 dots appeared, paused, disappeared, then nothing. 5 minutes, 10, 23. When the reply finally came, it was too clean. Just campaign edits. Boring stuff. No detail. No texture. No life. Vanessa had never been boring in her descriptions. She sold stories for a living. Now she was avoiding the. At dinner the next night, Ethan decided to try something else. "You mentioned the hotel campaign," he said casually, cutting into his steak. "The one keeping you late?" Vanessa nodded, sipping her wine. "Yeah, big client. Which hotel A beat?" "Not long enough to notice, unless you were waiting for it." "The one in Midtown," she said. "We've talked about it." Ethan smiled slightly. "We've talked about a lot of things." She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're starting to sound like you don't trust me." There it was. Deflection, clean, efficient. He shook his head. "Just curious." "Don't be," she replied lightly. "You'd hate my world," the same sentence again. Later that night, Ethan stood in the hallway outside their bedroom, listening to the faint hum of Vanessa's voice through the closed door. She wasn't laughing, wasn't animated. Her tone was careful, measured. He couldn't hear the words, only the rhythm. Pause. Speak. Pause. As if she was choosing each sentence with precision. When she came out, she looked at him with a small, controlled smile. "Work," she said before he could ask. Ethan nodded. Of course. The distance didn't arrive all at once. It unfolded in layers. Vanessa still touched him, but less often. Still smiled, but slightly delayed. Still asked about his day, but rarely listened past the first answer. It wasn't absence. It was reduction. Ethan began to notice the spaces between things. The half-second delay before she answered simple questions. The way she angled her phone away, not obviously just enough. The new habit of placing it face down on the table. Not hiding, just repositioning. One night she left it unlocked. Just for a moment. She was in the shower. Steam filled the bathroom water, running steady against tile. The phone lit up beside the sink. A notification. No name. Just a number. And a message preview, same room Ethan, didn't touch the phone. Didn't need to. Because the question wasn't what it meant. The question was, how long had it been happening? He stepped back. Out of the bathroom. Out of the moment. Because something inside him understood a rule he hadn't consciously decided yet. If you move too early, you lose visibility. The next morning, Vanessa kissed him goodbye like always. Late again tonight, she said, grabbing her bag. Ethan leaned against the counter, watching her. Of course you are. She smiled, mistaking the tone for acceptance. After she left, Ethan sat down at the kitchen island, opened his laptop, then his phone. He wasn't guessing anymore. He was mapping ride history, location pings, timestamps. Not to confront, to understand. Because patterns once fully seen couldn't be unseen. At 9:11 p.m. that night, the message came. Running late. Don't wait up. Ethan stared at it for a long moment, then typed, Take your time. 3 dots appeared, paused, disappeared. He set the phone down, not waiting for the reply. Because now he understood the pattern. And more importantly, he understood that the pattern wasn't accidental. It was controlled, curated, maintained, which meant so was the lie. Ethan leaned back in his chair, eyes drifting toward the city outside. Somewhere out there, Vanessa was living a version of reality that required precision to sustain. Timing, excuses, silence. But precision had a weakness. It depended on consistency. And consistency was something Ethan Cole knew how to break. He reached for his jacket, not rushing, not reacting, just moving forward. Because the unease wasn't loud, it didn't scream. It didn't demand confrontation, it whispered. And whispers, when followed carefully, led to truth. The email didn't look important. That was why it worked. Subject line receipt. Confirmation time. 11:42 p.m. sender. A hotel in Midtown New York City. Ethan almost ignored it. It had slipped into their shared inbox, the one they used for bill subscriptions, things that required both names attached. The kind of account no one thought twice about. Routine, invisible, safe. He opened it with the same casual detachment he used for utility statements. Scroll, amount, timestamp, then a pause. 2 items. Red wine times 2. Mixed nuts times 1. Room number included. And beneath it, guest name, Vanessa Cole. Ethan didn't react. Not immediately. His eyes stayed on the screen, but something behind them shifted, not outwardly, not dramatically. Just a quiet recalibration. Like a structure adjusting to new weight. Vanessa didn't drink wine during work. That wasn't suspicion. That was fact. She'd said it often, casually, consistently. I need to stay sharp for clients. Ethan leaned back slightly, one hand still resting on the laptop. There were no conclusions. Not yet, only variables. The time mattered, 11:42 p.m. Late enough to be believable, too late to be harmless. He checked the date. Cross-referenced it with memory. That was the night she'd said team brainstorm turned into drinks. Ethan exhaled slowly, not because he was surprised, but because something intangible had just become measurable. He didn't take a screenshot, didn't forward the email, didn't flag it. He left it exactly where it was, untouched. Because touching it meant acknowledging it, and acknowledging it meant acting too soon. That night when Vanessa walked through the door, everything felt normal. Too normal. She dropped her bag by the couch, kicked off her heels, and gave him the same smile she always did. Told you it'd be late, she said, loosening her hair. Ethan looked up from his glass of bourbon. Sounds like it was a long night. She shrugged. Productive. Yeah. She walked into the kitchen, opening the fridge. We're finally getting somewhere with this client. Ethan nodded slowly. That's good. There it was again. Surface meaning support. Hidden meaning confirmation. He watched her pour herself water. Not wine. Never wine at home after work. Did you eat? She asked. Yeah. What did you have? Something simple. She smiled. You're getting boring, maybe he said. But his eyes didn't leave her. Later in bed, Vanessa lay beside him, scrolling through her phone. The light from the screen flickered across her face, cool, detached, almost clinical. Ethan turned slightly toward her. What hotel is it again? He asked, voice soft. She didn't look up. Which one? The client. A beat. Then she locked her phone, turned to him. Oh, right. The Midtown one. Name. She hesitated. Not long, but long enough. It's still under NDA, she said. You know how these things work. Ethan held her gaze. Of course. Silence settled between them. Not heavy, not yet, but present. Vanessa smiled again, softer this time. You're asking a lot of questions lately. Ethan mirrored the expression. Just trying to keep up with you. She leaned in, kissing him lightly. You couldn't if you tried. It sounded playful. It wasn't. That night Ethan didn't sleep. Not because he was overwhelmed, but because his mind had shifted into something else entirely. Not emotional, analytical. At 1:17 a.m., he got out of bed quietly. Vanessa didn't stir. In the living room, the city hummed like a distant machine. Ethan sat down, laptop open, phone in hand. He wasn't searching for answers. He was building a system. Step 1, timeline. He pulled up their message history, scrolled, not reading mapping. Dates, times, language, patterns. Running late, client dinner, team drinks. Always clustered, always within the same window. Step 2. Correlation. He opened his ride-sharing app, checked shared rides, Vanessa's trips, locations. Pickup points didn't match her office. Not always. Sometimes a few blocks away, sometimes midtown. Step 3, frequency. Not every night. That would be obvious. Just enough to blend into plausibility. Step 4, behavior. The pauses in texting. The delayed responses. The missing details. Ethan leaned back, eyes scanning the invisible structure forming in front of him. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't random. It was design, and design could be understood. At 2:04 a.m., his phone buzzed softly. A notification, not from Vanessa. A security app, one he hadn't opened in months. Location sharing, still active. Ethan stared at the small blinking dot on the map. Midtown. He zoomed in, closer, closer. A familiar street, then a building. The same hotel. He didn't feel anger, not yet. What he felt was something quieter, colder. Certainty. He locked the phone. Closed the laptop. Sat there in the dim light, hands, still breathing steady. Because now he didn't need to imagine. He knew. And knowing changed everything. Not because it demanded confrontation, but because it offered something far more valuable. Control. Back in the bedroom, Vanessa shifted slightly in her sleep, unaware. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching her for a long moment. Not with love, not with hatred. With clarity. Because the smallest clue was never about what it revealed. It was about what it confirmed. And now there was no more doubt. Only timing. The truth hadn't been spoken. Not out loud. Not between them. But it was already everywhere. Ethan stopped looking for confirmation. Because confirmation implied uncertainty. And uncertainty was no longer the problem. The problem was imagination. It began subtly. Not with images, but with fragments. A pause in Vanessa's voice, replayed too many times. A smile that lingered half a second too long. A sentence that now sounded rehearsed. I'm working late. The words used to mean absence. Now they meant something else entirely. Ethan stood in the middle of their apartment, staring at nothing in particular. The space hadn't changed. Same furniture, same lighting, same quiet hum of the city outside their windows in New York City. But perception had. He could see it now, not physically, but vividly. Vanessa stepping into the hotel lobby, her posture shifting, subtle, instinctive. Not the version of her that walked through their front door. A different rhythm. A different energy. He imagined her checking in. The way she would smile, not too much, just enough. Professional. Controlled. The elevator ride. Silence, or maybe quiet laughter. Ethan closed his eyes. That was the mistake. Because once the image formed, it didn't stop. The hallway. Carpeted, muted, anonymous. The sound of heels against the floor. Measured. Unhurried. Like she had done it before. A door opening, not rushed, not nervous, familiar. Ethan exhaled sharply, opening his eyes. But the image didn't disappear. It adjusted. Now it wasn't imagination, it was reconstruction. Every detail he had observed began to fill the gaps. The timing of her texts, the pauses, the missing replies. They weren't random anymore, they were accounted for. At 9:03 p.m., the message. At 9:17 p.m., silence. At 9:42 p.m., delay explained. What happened in between? Ethan didn't need proof, his mind supplied it. And that was worse, because reality had limits, but imagination didn't. He sat down slowly on the edge of the couch, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped. Still, there was no anger in his face, no visible emotion, but internally everything was shifting, not breaking, rearranging. He thought about Vanessa's laugh, the real one, not the one she used in meetings, the one she used with him. And then he imagined that same laugh, in a room that wasn't theirs. His jaw tightened, not from rage, but from something quieter, something more controlled. Recognition. The next time Vanessa texted running late, "Don't wait up." Ethan didn't read it right away. He let it sit, watched the notification without opening it, because he already knew what it said. And more importantly, he knew what it meant. When he finally opened it, his expression didn't change, but his perception did. The words no longer felt like communication. They felt like cover. That night, Vanessa came home just after midnight. She looked the same, maybe slightly tired, maybe slightly distant. "Long day," she said, dropping her bag. Ethan nodded from the kitchen. "I figured." She walked over, poured herself water, always water. "You okay?" she asked, glancing at him. "Yeah, you seem quiet. Just thinking." She smiled faintly. "About work." A pause. Ethan looked at her, really looked. Something like that. Surface meaning stress. Hidden meaning you. Vanessa held his gaze for a moment, then looked away first. That was new. Later in bed, she reached for him, out of habit, out of expectation. Ethan didn't pull away, but he didn't move toward her either. There was a difference, a small one, but she felt it. "You're distant," she murmured. He stared at the ceiling. "Am I—" Another pause. Vanessa shifted slightly. "You've just been different." Ethan turned his head toward her, expression unreadable. "Have I?" Surface meaning confusion. Hidden meaning, I see everything. She hesitated, then forced a soft laugh. "Maybe I'm just tired." "Maybe," he said. Silence settled between them. But this time it wasn't empty. It was full of everything unspoken. Ethan closed his eyes, and immediately the images returned. Clearer now, sharper. Vanessa's hand reaching for someone else. Her voice softer. Her guard down. Things he no longer had access to. His chest tightened, not from heartbreak, from anticipation. Because the worst part wasn't what had already happened. It was what was still happening. Right now, somewhere in the city. Unseen. Unstopped. Ethan opened his eyes again, breathing steady, controlled. Because that feeling, that quiet, consuming awareness, wasn't weakness. It was preparation. Pain, when observed long enough, stopped being chaos. It became data. And Ethan Cole was done reacting to pain. He was studying it, understanding it, waiting. Because when the moment came, when truth and lie finally stood in the same room, he wouldn't hesitate. He wouldn't question. He wouldn't break. He would already know. And Vanessa would finally understand something she hadn't even considered yet. That the most dangerous moment wasn't being caught. It was being watched, long before you realized you were. The message came at 9:08 p.m. Right on time. "I'm working late. Don't wait up." Ethan stared at it for exactly 3 seconds. Not longer, not shorter. Because timing mattered, even now. He didn't reply, didn't acknowledge, didn't interrupt the pattern. Instead, he reached for his coat. Outside, the air carried that sharp, restless energy of New York City at night. Cars slicing through intersections, distant sirens dissolving into the background. Footsteps, overlapping in a rhythm that never fully stopped. The kind of city where no one noticed who was waiting. Or why. Ethan stood across the street from the hotel. Not directly in front, not hidden, just positioned. The entrance glowed under warm, curated lighting, polished glass doors, and a revolving entrance doorman, moving with rehearsed politeness. People came and went. Luggage rolled across marble floors. Laughter spilled briefly into the street before being swallowed by distance. Ethan checked his watch, 9:14 p.m. 6 minutes since the message. His phone buzzed once. A follow-up. "Don't stay up for me." He almost smiled. Surface meaning concern. Hidden meaning don't look. Ethan slipped the phone back into his pocket. Time began to stretch, not in minutes, in details. A couple walked past him, arguing softly. A taxi idled too long at the curb. A man in a gray suit exited the hotel, adjusting his tie, as if trying to erase something before stepping outside. Ethan noticed everything. Because noticing was the only thing left to do. 9:21 p.m. The doors opened again. A group of 3. Laughter. Champagne energy. Not her. 9:26 p.m. A woman in a black dress stepped out. Not her. 9:31 p.m. Ethan shifted his weight slightly. Not from discomfort. From awareness. Every second sharpened something inside him. Not impatience, precision. Because this wasn't about catching her. It was about seeing it. Fully. Without interruption. 9:37 p.m. The doors opened again. And for a fraction of a second, time didn't slow. It stopped. Vanessa stepped out. Same posture, same confidence, same controlled elegance she carried into every room. But not alone. The man beside her leaned slightly closer than necessary. Not touching, but familiar with the space between them. They were mid-conversation. Vanessa smiled. Not the polite one. Not the professional one. The real one. Ethan felt it then. Not anger, not yet. Recognition. Because he had already seen this moment, dozens of times. In his head. And reality didn't soften it. It confirmed it. They stopped just outside the entrance. The man said something. Vanessa laughed softly, looking down for a brief second. And then she looked up. And saw him. The distance between them was no more than 20 feet. Her expression didn't change immediately, not fully. First her eyes froze. Then everything else followed. Her hand loosened around her phone. It slipped, fell, hit the pavement with a sharp, hollow crack. No one moved. Not Ethan, not Vanessa. Not even the man beside her who turned slightly confusion just beginning to register. 5 seconds. 6, 7. No words, but everything was understood. Vanessa's breathing changed first, shallow, uneven. Ethan's didn't. He stood exactly where he had been. Hands in his coat pockets, expression calm. Not surprised. That was the worst part. Because in that silence, Vanessa saw it. Not discover, not shock, but certainty. And behind that certainty, something else. Time. Weeks of it. Maybe longer. A flicker crossed her face. Not denial, not yet. Something deeper. A realization. Realization forming too fast to stop. He knows, not just now. Before, the man beside her glanced between them. Vanessa, he said uncertain. She didn't respond, couldn't. Because in that moment, she wasn't deciding what to say. She was realizing that nothing she said would matter. Ethan finally moved. One step forward, not aggressive, not rushed, measured, deliberate. Vanessa instinctively stepped back. Just half a step, but it was enough. Enough to reveal everything. Ethan stopped, not closing the distance completely. He didn't need to. Long night, he asked. His voice was calm, even. Surface meaning casual. Hidden meaning I saw everything. Vanessa's lips parted slightly. No sound came out. Shock, freeze. There it was. The exact moment where the body understood before the mind could react. Her eyes dropped briefly to the broken phone on the ground. Then back to him. She started. Nothing followed. Because denial needed time. Deflection needed structure, and she had neither. Not yet. Ethan nodded once, as if confirming something only he had been tracking. Take your time, he said quietly. The same words he had texted her. Now reversed, weaponized. Vanessa flinched, barely visible, but real. The man beside her shifted uncomfortably. I think I should. Yes, Ethan said without looking at him. Not loud, not forceful, but final. The man didn't argue, didn't hesitate. He left. Just like that. Vanessa stood alone. Across from her husband, across from the truth. And for the first time there was no version of reality left to hide in. The city moved around them, unbothered, unaware. But inside that small, silent space, everything had already changed. Ethan looked at her one last time. Not with anger, not with grief, but with something far more devastating. Clarity. Then he turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in front of the hotel. Phone broken at her feet. Lie shattered in her throat. And one realization echoing louder than anything else. This wasn't the moment she got caught. This was the moment she realized she had been seen all along. The moment didn't begin when Vanessa walked out of the hotel. It began seconds before that when the revolving door turned slowly, and Ethan, standing across the street in New York City, felt something shift in the air. Not intuition, not hope, recognition. He had already lived this moment, over and over again. In silence, in imagination, in fragments stitched together from patterns and pauses. So when the glass door opened, reality didn't surprise him. It aligned. Vanessa stepped out. Her heels met the pavement with that same controlled rhythm he knew so well. Her posture, straight shoulders, relaxed, face composed. Perfect. Until it wasn't. The man beside her leaned in slightly as they walked, speaking low, familiar. Too familiar. Not touching her, but close enough to erase the space that should have existed. Vanessa smiled, not politely, not professionally, genuinely. That was the detail that mattered. Ethan didn't move, didn't breathe differently, didn't blink more than necessary, because this exact version of her was the one he had already accepted. They reached the edge of the entrance, stopped, and then Vanessa looked up. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden realization, no immediate reaction. Just a simple shift of gaze, and then impact. Her eyes locked onto Ethan, across the street. Still, waiting. Time fractured. Her body didn't move first, her mind did. A flash of confusion quickly replaced by recognition, then something deeper. Understanding, not what is happening. But how long has this been happening? Her hand loosened, the phone slipped, fell, hit the ground. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Ethan heard it, but didn't react, because the sound wasn't important. The silence after was 5 seconds. In those 5 seconds, no one spoke, no one moved. But everything was said. Vanessa's breathing changed. Her chest rising just slightly faster. Eyes scanning Ethan's face, searching. For anger, for shock, for anything that would suggest this was new. But there was nothing. And that was what broke her. Because in that stillness she saw it, not confrontation. Conclusion. Ethan didn't look like a man who had just discovered the truth. He looked like a man who had been waiting for it to reveal itself. The man beside her shifted, confused, unaware of the full weight of what stood between them. "Vanessa," he said quietly. She didn't answer, couldn't, because every version of the story she had prepared, every explanation, every excuse, every carefully constructed layer, collapsed in that silence. There was no room for denial, not when the other person wasn't asking questions. Ethan took a single step forward, measured, calm. Vanessa instinctively stepped back. Just half a step, but enough. Enough to expose fear. Not fear of being caught. Fear of something worse, being understood. Completely. Ethan stopped again, maintaining the distance, because distance was control. Their eyes didn't break. Vanessa's lips parted slightly. A breath caught in her throat. She wanted to speak, to say something, anything that could slow this moment down. But the truth was already moving faster than words. And Ethan wasn't giving her a script. Another second passed, then another. The city moved around them. Cars passed, voices blurred. A siren wailed in the distance. But inside that moment, there was only stillness. And realization. A flick across Vanessa's face, not denial, not deflection. Recognition. The kind that arrives too late. He knows. Not from this, from before. Days, weeks, maybe longer. Her shoulders dropped slightly. Not visibly to anyone else. But to Ethan it was unmistakable. The moment she understood that this wasn't discovery. It was confirmation, and she was already behind. Ethan tilted his head just slightly, studying her, not judging, not reacting, observing, as if she were part of something he had already mapped out. And now he was simply verifying the final piece. Vanessa swallowed. Her voice tried to form. Nothing came out. Because anything she said now would exist in a world where the truth was already complete. And words were too late to change that. The man beside her stepped back, instinctively, feeling something he couldn't fully understand but knew he didn't belong in. Ethan didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge him, because he wasn't part of this moment. He never had been. This was never about the other man. It was about the lie, and the person who chose it. Ethan finally moved again, one more step, closing the distance just enough. Not enough to touch, not enough to confront, just enough to make escape impossible. Vanessa held her breath, waiting, for anger, for words, for something loud. But Ethan gave her none of it. Only presence, only silence. And in that silence, a final understanding settled between them. This was the end. Not because he said it, but because there was nothing left to pretend. Ethan looked at her one last time. Not as his wife, not as someone he loved, but as someone he had already let go of. Then without a word he turned and walked away. No hesitation, no pause, no backward glance. Vanessa didn't follow, didn't call out, didn't move. Because she knew in that moment that chasing him would only confirm what had already happened. She stood there, frozen, the broken phone at her feet, the hotel behind her, the city moving forward without her. And one realization echoing louder than anything else. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was judgment. Final. Absolute. And she had already been sentenced, long before she ever saw him standing there. Vanessa didn't remember how she got home. Only that the city blurred past her in fractured reflections. Glass headlights, strangers' faces dissolving into streaks of light across the windows of a taxi she didn't consciously choose. By the time she reached the apartment in New York City, her hands were still trembling. Not visibly, but enough. The door was unlocked. That detail hit first. Ethan was inside. He stood near the kitchen island sleeves, rolled up a glass of bourbon, untouched in his hand. Exactly where he had been on nights when nothing was wrong. Vanessa stepped in slowly, closed the door behind her. The sound echoed louder than it should have. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Not the silence from before. This one was different. This one had words waiting to break through. I can explain. It came out too fast, too rehearsed, too fragile. Ethan didn't turn immediately. He took a slow sip from his glass, set it down, then looked at her. Can you? Surface meaning a question. Hidden meaning I already know. Vanessa swallowed, her throat dry. It's not what you think, she said quickly. Denial. The first instinct. Ethan nodded once, as if acknowledging a step in a process he had already anticipated. Then tell me what I think, she froze. Because that required knowing what he knew. And she didn't. She started then stopped. Her mind raced, searching for structure, for something coherent enough to hold together. It didn't mean anything. She tried again. It was just stress work. Deflection. Ethan's gaze didn't shift, didn't soften, didn't harden. It stayed still. You've been working late, he said quietly. The same phrase, but now stripped of its disguise. Vanessa flinched, barely. I told you it's been a lot lately. Say it again. She blinked. What? The line Ethan said, the one you always use. Her chest tightened. I'm working late. The words landed between them, flat, lifeless. Vanessa looked away, because now she could hear it too. Not as an excuse. As a pattern, silence stretched. Then something inside her cracked. I didn't plan it, she said suddenly, voice breaking. It just happened. One time and then, collapse, the third instinct. Her composure unraveled fast after that. Tears came uneven, uncontrolled. Her hands moved without purpose, gripping her coat, then letting go, then gripping again. I was going to tell you, she said. I just didn't know how. Ethan tilted his head slightly. When? The question was soft, too soft. Vanessa hesitated, and that hesitation answered everything. I don't know, she whispered. Ethan nodded again, not in agreement, in confirmation. You weren't, he said. Not accusing, not angry. Certain. Vanessa stepped closer, desperate now. This doesn't have to end like this, she said quickly. We can fix this. People go through things like this all the time. False logic, borrowed hope. Ethan didn't interrupt. We can go to therapy, she continued. I'll cut him off. Completely. You'll never have to see him again. I'll do whatever it takes. Her voice broke again. I'll do anything. Ethan finally moved, not away, toward her. One step. Vanessa's breath caught. Hope. Fragile. Immediate. He stopped in front of her. Close enough now that she could see every detail of his expression. Looking for something, anything. Regret, love, hesitation. And then she saw it. A crack. Small, but real. Ethan's gaze shifted slightly. His jaw tightened. I don't know, he said. 3 words, and they changed everything. Because for the first time he sounded uncertain. Vanessa latched onto it instantly. We can fix this, she said again, stepping even closer. We've built too much to just throw it away. Her hand reached for his. This time he didn't pull back, and that felt like salvation. I made a mistake, she whispered, a stupid, meaningless mistake. Ethan looked down at her hand, then back at her. Meaningless, he repeated. Surface meaning clarification. Hidden meaning you chose it anyway. Vanessa nodded quickly. Yes, it didn't matter. He doesn't matter. Ethan studied her face. Longer this time. As if searching for something real beneath everything she was saying. Then he exhaled slowly. Okay, he said. The word landed softly, but its impact was immediate. Vanessa blinked. Okay, she repeated. Ethan nodded once. We'll figure it out. Not a promise, not forgiveness, but close enough. Hope flooded in, fast, unstable. Vanessa let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Relief. I knew you wouldn't just give up on us, she said, voice trembling. Ethan didn't respond. Because he didn't need to. His silence now meant something different. Possibility. Vanessa stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him. This time he let her, and in that moment she believed it. That they could survive this, that she hadn't lost everything. That the worst had passed. But Ethan standing there, arms loosely at his sides, eyes open, staring past her, knew something she didn't. This wasn't reconciliation. It was positioning. Because hope, when given at the right moment, was the most effective way to make sure someone stayed exactly where you needed them to be. And Vanessa, still holding on to him, didn't realize yet that she had just stepped into the final stage of something Ethan had been building, long before she ever walked out of that hotel. The ballroom shimmered with curated perfection. Crystal chandeliers refracted soft gold light across polished marble floors. Waitstaff moved like choreography, silent, efficient, invisible. Conversations floated in controlled tones, laughter measured, deliberate. This was Vanessa's world. Or at least the version of it she believed she controlled. The event was everything she had worked toward. A high-profile PR showcase in the heart of New York City. A campaign launch for a luxury hotel brand that would cement her position, elevate her status, secure her next promotion. Her name was everywhere. On screens, on brochures, on lips. Vanessa Cole is the reason this campaign works. She's brilliant. Fastest rise I've seen in years. She smiled, accepted the praise, performed flawlessly. Because that's what she did best. From across the room, Ethan watched. Not hidden, not distant, present. Dressed in a tailored black suit, posture, relaxed expression unreadable, he blended in perfectly with the environment. Another successful man supporting his accomplished wife. No one questioned him. Vanessa saw him about 20 minutes into the event. Their eyes met across the room. For a brief second, something inside her tightened. Not fear, not quite. Memory. The hotel, the silence, the almost end. But then she remembered what came after. His hesitation, his will figure it out. Hope. She smiled at him, small, reassured. Ethan didn't smile back. He simply raised his glass slightly. A gesture that could mean anything. Or everything. Vanessa turned away first, because tonight was about her. An hour later, the room quieted. Lights dimmed slightly. A screen behind the stage flickered to life. Vanessa stepped up, confident, composed, untouched. "Good evening," she began, voice steady, practiced. "Tonight represents more than a campaign. It represents vision, precision, understanding what people want before they even realize it themselves." A ripple of approval moved through the audience. Ethan watched. Not her words, her timing, her control. Because control was what this had always been about. Vanessa continued moving seamlessly through her presentation. Slides transitioned behind her images of luxury suites, curated experiences, emotional storytelling, crafted to sell something deeper than a room. And then she paused. Before we close, she said, smiling, "I want to thank someone who's been quietly supporting me through all of this." Her eyes found Ethan, my husband. Soft applause. Ethan didn't move immediately. Then slowly he set his glass down and walked forward. Vanessa stepped slightly aside, giving him space, expecting something warm, something supportive, a moment of shared success. Ethan reached the stage, took the microphone from her hand, and for a brief second their fingers touched. Vanessa felt it. Cold, not physically, but something beneath it. A shift. Ethan turned to face the audience, calm, collected. "Thank you," he said. His voice carried easily through the room, measured, controlled. "I've had the unique privilege of watching this campaign come together." Vanessa smiled, relief settling in. "Yes," he continued, watching the details, the precision, the consistency. A slight pause. "Patterns, really." Something in his tone shifted. Vanessa felt it immediately. Small but unmistakable. Because the most interesting thing about patterns, Ethan said, is that they only work when no one is paying attention. The room grew quieter. Vanessa's smile faltered, just slightly. Ethan turned not to her but to the screen behind them. "Would you mind?" he said. A technician, uncertain but compliant, adjusted the display. The next slide appeared. Not part of the presentation. A document. A receipt. Timestamp 11:42 p.m. Minibar charges. Guest name Vanessa Cole. A murmur moved through the room. Vanessa's breath caught. "I believe this was from one of those late work nights," Ethan said calmly. Her body froze. Shock. That brief suspended second where everything stops. Number. Her mind raced. Too fast. Too late. "Ethan," she whispered. He didn't look at her. Another slide. Location data. Timestamped entries, repeated visits, same address, same pattern. "I'm working late," Ethan said, his voice unchanged. The phrase echoed through the room. Not as explanation, as evidence. Vanessa's vision blurred slightly. Denial surged first. This isn't what it looks like," she said, stepping forward, reaching for the microphone. Ethan stepped back, just enough, out of reach. Deflection followed. "You're invading my privacy. This is insane." Her voice cracked. People were watching, whispering, stepping back. Phones were out now, recording. And then collapse. Her voice broke completely. "Please," she said, quieter now, "not here." Ethan finally turned to her, and for the first time there was something in his eyes. Not anger. Finality. "You're right," he said softly. A beat. This didn't start here. Vanessa stared at him. Because in that moment something clicked, not about the evidence. About him. "How long?" she whispered. Ethan held her gaze. "Long enough." Then answered not with a number, but with the truth she hadn't realized she was asking. Long enough. The words hit harder than anything else. Because they changed everything. Every lie she had told, every message, every moment she thought she was in control. Rewritten, observed, understood. Vanessa's knees weakened slightly. The room felt smaller, closer. No escape. Not from the people, from the reality. She wasn't exposed because she got caught. She was exposed because she had been allowed to continue. Ethan turned back to the audience. "I used to think trust meant not looking too closely," he said. "But it turns out sometimes the most honest thing you can do is see everything. Silence. Heavy. Complete." He set the microphone down. Didn't wait for applause. Didn't wait for reaction. Just walked off the stage, past Vanessa. Without stopping. Without looking back. Vanessa stood alone under the lights, the screen still glowing behind her. Evidence frozen in place. Her career. Her image. Her control. Gone. Not taken. Revealed. Hours later, the apartment was silent. Vanessa stood in the doorway, still empty. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Messages, calls, notifications. None of them mattered. She looked down. At her finger. Slowly she slid the ring off, held it for a moment, then placed it on the table, next to the phone. The screen still lit with a message she hadn't sent. "Can we talk?" Her thumb hovered. Then the screen went dark, unsent. Across the city, Ethan stood alone by the window. The skyline stretched endlessly before him, unchanged. He reached into his pocket, pulled something out. A printed receipt. The first one. He looked at it for a moment, then let it fall into the trash. Not because it didn't matter, but because it didn't control him anymore. The lights of the city flickered, and somewhere far below a door closed, quietly. Finally.